listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your resource to better understand and execute successful podcast ad campaigns. Hello, and welcome to the Podcast Advertising Playbook. I'm your host, Heather Osgood, and I am joined today by Bryan Barletta. Bryan is the president of Podcast Movement and also oversees partnerships at Sounds Profitable, or you're a partner at Sounds Profitable.
Partner at Sounds. Yeah, I guess we wanted to sound like a consulting firm.
There we go. But yeah, so Bryan, I think this is your third time on the show, and that might be the most I've ever had anyone on the show. So
I appreciate
congratulations.
That. Thank you.
But yeah, welcome to the program. How's everything in your world?
Great. Incredibly exciting. I think that podcasting has hit like this maturity point, and I think that we're just like really hitting our stride. People are really feeling comfortable. There's not that question of like the crazy like what ifs. I think things are more grounded, and I think people are more reasonable about expectations. And so there are still plenty of people struggling to adapt to that. But I think that the people who have been ahead of the curve and knew that was coming are just finding success, like finding a lot of fun and a lot of opportunity and a lot of ability to just continue to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like for the last few years, we have all been singing the economy woes and really like so worried that the economy was going to, drop at any moment. And I always hate talking about the economy because I don't want to jinx anything. But I know at least at True Native Media, we're already having a record-breaking year in 2026. And things are going really well in the podcast industry. And it sounds like that's what you're seeing kind of across all of the ecosphere that you deal with so deeply on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when we talk about people spending money in podcasting, we forget that there's a human behind it that will get fired if it doesn't work. And so when we're pushing them to buy into podcasting, they're going back to the people who've done right by them, that they know that like if their boss is upset about it or the client is upset about it, they can figure out how to make everybody happy. So it's about the service as well as the performance. We know podcasting works. We've proven it out time and time again. The buyers know it works. But what you need is that partner to just be like, hey, I know you nailed it on this one, but like, we just need that little extra mile and it'll help us with the renewal, it'll help us with that stuff. The people like you, like at True Native, that are understanding that and are really being there for that hands-on nature are seeing exactly that. The advertisers already in this space, the agencies already in this space are renewing with strength with all of those partners, which also allows you to build up for how do you go find the next people that aren't advertising there yet. And those people, I've been going to more and more events. I went to CES for the first time. I feel like the bigger than podcasting events, previous years, we'd talk to people like, oh, we work in the podcast space. We don't do anything in there, but I love podcasts, and they just deflect. And this year they're like, you know what, tell me what we could do in podcasting. And so we're becoming unavoidable. So hearing that, exactly what you're saying, that the people who put in the work and that provide great service and great results, or when the results aren't good, know how to make their clients happy, are having the most stable and growing year already before they even get into new business necessarily. But today's issue of the download, we'll have an article from Digiday, I think, that was talking about how more advertisers used the economy issues and the tariffs and all that to kind of hold back money and be a little bit more cautious with it. And I think that we're always looking for an excuse why a buyer's not spending. But I think that you just nailed it. I mean, like the people that are doing right by buyers in podcasting are seeing renewals and growth at amazing, sustainable rates, whereas the people who haven't proved it out yet are having to fight for that chance. But I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're definitely seeing that. Now, measurement has obviously been a really important part of the whole industry. And I still feel like when we talk to new buyers, they say, yeah, but what about measurement? Can we track this? Like, how do we get to a place where we're able to really prove out what our buy is doing? So attribution has been a really important part of the overall ecosystem. And I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, what are you seeing in the attribution world? Are you seeing anything change, anything on the horizon?
Yeah, so Spotify recently put out an announcement about expanding how they're doing video ads. And we have an interview coming out with them soon. And it's very similar to what we heard from YouTube for the announcement too. This idea that like the video ad component that's normally baked in could be shifted out at different times. And when I was talking with the team there and in the interview, one of the things I really pushed on is I said, this is really great, but video right now can't be tracked by normal attribution tools. Your
Hmm.
platform tracks it, but your platform's also the one that serves it. It's not an ad, so it's not getting filtered out by people with premium, so it can't get the ad benefits on there. Are you aware that like that's going to be holding people back from really buying into this because they won't be able to track it? And they said yes, and we're listening. Now, go 6 months, 12 months ago, people like Spotify moved away from the word podcasting into creator. And look where they are now. They're back to it. The word has so much gravity around it.
Hmm.
So I think that they get it. And I think that it's been very impressive. We put out an article, Jameson Pod News quoted it today saying that we said, and we did, and I still kind of will stand by it. Like, maybe don't immediately turn on video and podcasting unless you understand fully the impact to it, the revenue impact, and how all of your buyers are going to respond to it because of the lack of attribution, the lack of analytics that are third party on those things. But we watched Spotify basically say it wasn't coming and then move towards it is. And you can see all of the companies that they're working with to add it in there. All of those companies kind of stood their ground and said, like, we'd love to buy into this. We'd love to participate, but we need you to meet us. And not a single one of those companies that are doing that, attribution matters to them. So they're like, if that was the press release, if this was the first step, I think it's really easy to infer that there's at least the expectation that there will be more coming.
Hmm.
When is the hard answer? But I think that we are seeing some growth on that. To echo that, though, we're seeing fragmentation. I mean, we've never been more fragmented as podcasting. RSS is smaller and smaller portion of podcasting. With YouTube having their own thing, YouTube might not relent in the same way that Spotify does on this end, or maybe they beat them to it. We'll see what happens there. But it's almost easier to say that it's three different forms of podcasting just on audio and video, right? Between YouTube, RSS, and Spotify. And then you get into the components of social and all these things. So I think that the potential and the reach is bigger than it's ever been. I think we're entering spaces that somehow have worse tracking solutions than us. But the question is how much should we hold our breath and hold back before trying it when those markets are far bigger than us and haven't previously been able to push back and get the platforms to relent.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's break down everything you just said. So essentially, YouTube announced that in March, they're going to be allowing for dynamic ad insertion. So we're going to be able to dynamically insert host read ads into videos. And then Spotify announced that they were going to be doing the same thing in video. And I believe that that is supposed to be happening in April. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is I think using the word dynamic ad insertion might be dangerous on there. So
Okay.
first, these ads will be accessible to people who do pay for premium that usually removes ads. So if I were to buy today an ad on this version of this video on YouTube directly through Google, then if you watched it with a premium subscription, you wouldn't see the ad.
Right.
All the ads are removed. This is what did I call it? Host enabled insertion, right? Like we called it
Okay.
way back when, like how Captivate used to do it,
Hmm.
how Transistor does it, where it's like there's a interval, right? It's a million views or 7 days or every Thursday. There's a pattern and there's a way to switch out what the content chunk is
Hmm.
that's going to be in there. It's all anchored around video. And so it is uploaded on their platform. It's not meant to be served by third party necessarily. And because it's swapping out content, that's kind of where the pushback is on, well, we don't allow pixels for like loading the content overall. So this is a segment of the content, not an ad. YouTube announced that they are starting to test it, but I don't think that they have like a public application date yet. And it doesn't seem like it'll be necessarily this year. Spotify has been more aggressive on the phases of it. And it seems like there will be a live visible beta through some of those partners this year, with more being built out in the future.
Okay. So what you're saying is that it's not necessarily going to be thought of as advertising, but it's more thought of as content that's going to be swapped
Well,
in and out?
We'll think about it that way, right? Like if this podcast was on YouTube
Hmm.
and
Which,
if we grabbed a commercial and just put it in there, a regular commercial, you'd be flagged and would be removed from YouTube. But if you read an ad, it's a host read ad, they justify that as content. That's been a big part of YouTube forever, right?
mhm.
That doesn't fall into their advertising cycle. This is admitting that there might need to be the ability to freshen those ads up. Now, whether advertisers want that or publishers want that, or YouTube and Spotify are using this as a way to say, like, hey, why don't you enter and let me know what that advertiser was? And by the way, you could feel free to put the CPM and other metrics there, and we'll
Mhm.
give you reporting. And when we hit a certain threshold, we can switch it to a different advertiser. Could you tell us who that advertiser is? Right? there's three sides of it, right? The
Sure.
platform gets a bunch of data. Does the publisher want to sell that? Does the advertiser want to be removed? But that's the idea is basically to shift out a segment. Like if chapter three of your five chapter video was
Is an
always an
ad.
ad, how do you switch that up on some triggers that are not who is viewing it
Hmm.
individually, which is
Hmm.
dynamic ad insertion, but where are we? How many total impressions? How many
Hmm.
days has it been? What month is it? What season is it? All like hard markers that create a finite combination.
Hmm. Well, and um, those hard markers probably are actually hard markers. Whereas when we're talking about downloads or impressions in podcasts, it's like, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't I have to actually watch the ad in order to be considered a hard marker in YouTube
Well,
or
and
that
that's what's really
segment of
interesting.
the content?
Exactly. That's what my hope is, right? Like right now, what we have in YouTube is the total number of views and things like that, and the view duration. And you have to know where, if you're looking for episode, where you put the
Mhm.
ad. Most videos are not going to be the exact same length. You're not going to have the markers at exactly the same length. Maybe
Right.
you do, which is fantastic, but I don't know if that necessarily works for everyone. And so telling like what percentage of people consumed it is tough. If at a minimum, not firing third-party data, YouTube and Spotify are now providing for your baked in consumption. Like the person got to this and like
Hmm.
that was a view on there, not only the view of the total, but the view of that baked
Segment.
in content, that segment, right?
Hmm.
And that's when it flips over. That's really exciting. It's one step forward. Is it enough for advertisers? We'll see. I mean, they've been buying Mr. Beast and all these other people and influencers on
Sure.
social that don't have that attribution, but they also have the opportunity for a click or a tap on the link that's way more ingrained.
But don't DCM tags work on YouTube and in video?
So they do if you're buying, if I'm a third party buying in there, or if I'm serving into my own inventory through like a MCN or whatnot there, I can serve that, but
Mm.
that's an ad. Remember, if someone's a subscriber, they won't get that.
Oh, so that's the
hmm
difference.
And then that now
Okay.
we talk about fragmentation there. Like DCM, like when I was in mobile advertising, I watched Google put everybody else out of business on
Sure.
attribution and analytics on there. I mean, Seismic, I think, was acquired by Amazon or something there, but that was one of the bigger names beforehand. And like it very quickly just became DCM tags, right? That was the only thing.
Right.
Now we look at the landscape. Do we think there's a world where Spotify, who now views themselves as a competitor of YouTube, will allow a DCM tag for tracking? I don't know. I look at their pathway for programmatic and the things that they're doing there, and I'm seeing that like there's a detach with AdsWiz, not as involved there. AdsWiz owned by SiriusXM, SiriusXM not prioritizing video on Spotify, but providing on YouTube. So these nets are getting complicated there. But then the other question is like, do we think that YouTube will be certifying people like Podscribe, Magellan, Claritas, Veritonic in their platform, or is it easy for DCM to finally say, you know what? We can take forwarded IP address and user agent and do podcast attribution. Our
Hmm.
pixel will work on YouTube and can work in
Hmm.
RSS.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to see a lot of shakeups there, but I still think it's going to be fragmented no matter what.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm actually really surprised that Google didn't act faster in the attribution space for podcasting because it seemed like obviously with DCM, like they're very positioned to be able to do that. And I guess they just didn't see it as being a big enough opportunity. And so all of these independent companies have kind of sprouted up, which is really fascinating to me. And I think, like you said, part of it and the challenge, right, is all the fragmentation. And now we're going to say, oh, well, we're going to use this measurement tool on audio and this measurement tool on video. And like, or maybe we're going to use like first party data here and third party data there. And it just, I mean, it becomes quickly very challenging for the marketer, right? Which is kind of what we're all trying to get away from is how do we simplify the ad buying process? And I'm really fascinated by all of it. And so just getting back, I guess, a little bit to Spotify. So is Spotify with their ad insertion, it's going to be different, I presume, than like the switching out content segments for advertising. Are they moving toward more of a
It's
pure dynamic
No,
insertion
it
on
seems
video?
like very similar to
Oh,
the
it's
the
very similar.
conversations that I'm hearing from YouTube and Spotify seem like the same intent, right? Swapping out content and segments and that mindset
Interesting.
there, and not necessarily the ad server. Because if
Hmm.
not, how do you justify to the end user why I'm still getting ads when I pay for ad free? right? So that's the hard part
Right.
there. If you set the content guidelines, it has to be the host, it has to be this type of ad, it has to work in that way. You can justify it as content. If you allow it to go through your ad server, it's a lot of extra work to make sure it doesn't get flagged by your, this person is premium, don't serve them ads. So I think that will be interesting there. But you hit on something interesting. Last year, I think podcasting won the Golden Award for success in programmatic advertising, and we didn't. No, they canceled the award ceremony because of the tariffs and all that. But it's like we busted our butt. Like
Mhm.
we nailed it. If you want to buy uniformly in podcasting, you can buy programmatically and use all your third party data and all your tools and all these things there. I think it's better than it's ever been, and I think it's so close to perfect that I don't know how much more progress can be made there. And
Mhm.
that's great because we can move it as a back, like the background, right? The baseline for what we all perform against. But here's the truth. All the people yelling at us saying that like, you need this, that's how we spend with you, immediately turned around and were just like, that was if we just went really deep and complex on like 10 creators. And everyone I felt was kind of like, you mean the thing we've been trying to sell you for 20 years? So like I think that the truth is the efficiencies. Like I look at influencer and I look at like social and all those things, they're not easy,
No.
right? There's still major brands and agencies that don't get it or don't buy into it, or holding companies who are resistant to it, or only do it in specific ways, or only do it with big partners because it's messy. I mean, heck, when I first started, we had a major computer company that we talked to that told me that when they do social, they have them use a very unique hashtag for each creator that they then run banner ads against. And I was like, so
Wow.
you paid twice? And they're like, yeah. I was like, that sucks. So to me, like that's not a win, right? That's truly a negative on there. I think the question I have to ask you is that like if we can't make the process for you to necessarily or for a buyer to execute, which I
Mhm.
think challenges the value of a network like yourself, are you seeing that there are tools coming out or coming across things that make it easier for your team to manage more shows on a unique bespoke level and work with buyers where they want to be met?
I mean, that's such a good question. And there are so many tools. I feel like, so many things have launched. And at the end of the day, it still really comes back for us personally to the hosting providers and what are the capabilities of the hosting providers. And when you have, Megaphone, which is owned by Spotify, and Art19, who's owned by Amazon, as being kind of two of the bigger players, and we're looking at both of them and saying, these are still our limitations. Like, I still constantly am frustrated that I can't do any forecasting at all within these platforms. I can't set something, that says, hey, this campaign is severely under delivering. Let me send you an alert that says, take a look at this campaign that's severely under delivering. I mean, the tools that these hosting companies provide are, they're still quite weak. And yeah, there's third party options, but then it's like how many third party options can one company sustain before you're, paying all your profits to software companies. And
No,
so, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge.
I super get that, but I think that that's like the value is that like a brand on their own or a publisher on their own paying for all those solutions is really tough. But a
It
network
is.
and representation firm like yourself being able to pay for it and spread that cost out as part of that, as a
Sure.
service that they have and that you have, is really powerful. I do think that there are a handful of companies in podcasting that have built amazing tools, but have priced it on what they need to be in business, not on what the market will bear.
Yeah.
I feel like I think the success of Sounds Profitable is honestly based on like a few things. And the biggest one is really kind of like reading the room. And I think that that's the truth of it. Podcasting is not a space where the margins are massive or that we have the appetite for big tech, right? Paying 60K for something that means you could not hire your next 60K employee is not feasible. But being able to utilize something that automatically generates more revenue than you were generating and like on top of what you paid, like that's easy, right? If day one I pay 5,000 a month, but I make 7,000 total, done. I'll do that all day long. And I think most people would. So when I think about these tools, we work with a bunch of them, there's Flight Path, Frequency, LiveRead, Podstock, a Listener, Mondometrics. The team at Bumper has one. There's all these great tools out there that I think really can bridge the gap. And I think that the truth is a single publisher can't make as much use out of it as a network can or a rep firm, and they can't afford it. And so I think that that's while I do want all this to get easier, I think that the success of it is how does your team make it easier for someone to buy, not how is it easier overall? Because I
Agreed.
think that, yeah, if we wait for the hosting platforms, if we wait for the apps, we're going to be dead.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah. So I'm really curious, like, what your thoughts are. Podscribe put out a release yesterday saying that, oh, hey, just so you know, we're not actually measuring anything on Spotify. So if your campaign includes that, then your attribution numbers are going to be off. And Podscribe obviously has emerged, I would say, as one of the leading attribution companies in the industry. And it's very perplexing to me that we've got a lot of agencies that are using that as a gold standard. And I just think it's really fascinating the way that the industry is evolving, where we, have pushed so hard to go into video, and now we're in video. And as we said, we can't track it well. And now one of the leading attribution companies is saying, oh, yeah, we can't even track this whole segment of your buy. And yeah, I mean, I think that it really kind of calls into question the value that we are bringing, right? Like, I want to make sure, and also for me, it gets back to the publishers, right? Because as we've had our shows move to, Spotify video, suddenly it's like, hey, we're getting calls, well, this show isn't performing as well as it did. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're looking at half of their audience now instead of their whole audience. And you're actually probably getting better results than you got before, because I've seen the video ads, they're amazing, but they're not measuring it in the same way. And so I don't know. I'm really interested to see if, especially some of the, direct response agencies make a shift or change the way that they're using these tools.
So I feel being one of the founding members of Barometric that was acquired by Claritas and like bringing attribution into podcasting, I've always felt that the limits of podcast attribution was both like a boon and a bane, right? Like I think that like it propelled us. I think it probably put 500,000 or like 500 million to 1 billion of our increased revenue. Like like it helped justify why people should spend more with us as like an industry overall. But the limitations were always there, IP and user agent. Now the limitations are
Mhm.
there that they're not in other space. We had a video summit at one point, and we had a bunch of brands and we had a bunch of publishers there. And one of the things that was really interesting is I asked a major advertiser, I said, do you buy YouTube? And they said, yeah. I said, what's the CPM? They're like, usually like $70 CPM, which was awesome. But they explained to me that like it's usually just them or maybe another advertiser, but like there's usually multiple spots. They get the top link at the top of the description. So it's there. And I said, how do you measure it? They're like, they show us total views and the clicks work out enough that it's worth it. And I was like, that's pretty cool, right? They said, you buy in podcasting? They're like, yeah. I was like, you use attribution? They said, yeah. I said, how do you feel about it? They're like, kind of got to buy it on vibes. Like, I know it works and the data is there, but like the data doesn't always prove what I believe is happening. So we just had to like push and wait it out. And like, that's really the tough part. The attribution might not show what I believe is happening and the effect of it. And we just have to give it a little bit more time. It might say it's good when I know it's bad. It might say it's bad when I know it's good.
Hmm.
I said, okay, I've been killing it for you for years. I have 2 million downloads a month, and it's half Spotify, half Apple, and I go video. And now it's 1 million downloads and 1 million Spotify views. We still in business? And she goes, no. I said, what? And she's like, I can't buy the video. And I said, why? And she said, because it doesn't work in the attribution tool. And I said, okay, but you just said you can't rely on it. And then you also said in YouTube where there's no attribution you buy. And she's like, yeah, but you changed things. As an industry, over reliance on attribution has made it so that that person who honestly is risking their role constantly, because if podcasting magically doesn't work or doesn't fit into how their company views success, that person really could get fired, right? Like that's the truth of it, right? Like, and so that person now has to go, okay, well, I convinced them that it would be a separate set of analytics tools, and now you're telling me it can't even be in there. That's kind of the pushback that we're seeing. But think about it. I mean, Mr. Beast doesn't do attribution like that. He does clicks, he does promo codes, he does all that. He's not struggling on ads and the campaigns that he's getting across. Our problem is that we anchored so much around it, and that is less and less of our business. So I think what you'll see is a lot of shift from agencies that understand it. I think a lot of pressure on publishers and networks to discount when that isn't there, even though everybody does know that it is performing the same or potentially better.
Mhm.
But I think we're in an interesting spot where I think the attribution companies, I'd love to start, and we plan to start pulling together the attribution companies and publishers and kind of put out what the expectation is. Because as of right now, the attribution companies are more than sufficient on doing anything they fire a pixel on. But I don't know where our comfort level should be right now on their analysis of the non-pixeled inventory, right?
Mhm.
Because there's no standout in YouTube. You can't pay for that in YouTube for what you think conversion was on YouTube. There's no company that's weathered that. So I don't know why that's a feature that we should be endorsing right now for podcast attribution companies to say about YouTube or Spotify video without the data.
Right. Well, and one of the things that Podscribe had said in their release was like, hey, just give us access to your numbers and then we'll create a modeling document. And frankly, like that makes me concerned, right? Like, I don't know if
Mhm.
I want to give you access to all of those numbers, number one. And then number two, like you're modeling it. And what if I don't like the way you modeled it, right? Or what
100%.
if but, and also it's not correct, right? It's like a guess. And then I go back to, well, why are we just not doing promo codes and unique URLs if, right? Because we took that and we modeled results off of those. So, it's really fascinating. I personally think that the next 6 months, maybe, and it's interesting for me to hear your timeline with YouTube and Spotify and their ad serving or the content creation switch out is, I think that hearing your
Way
timeline
slower, way
is way
slower.
slower than I thought it would be. But I
Yeah.
feel like, so then maybe I'll say a year, but I think that the next year is going to be very pivotal to the podcast industry because I feel like it's this convergence of we've got audio, we've got video, we've got attribution, we've got ad serving, we've, like all of these pieces because what I think one of the things that has been so challenging for me is that for years I had a colleague in the industry who was like, embedded ads are horrible. Like, I can't believe you guys in podcasting aren't selling on impressions. And, and then now we got to impression based, selling and buying and like we're doing good. And now all of a sudden we go to video and the same person's like, well, we should just switch back to embedded for everything. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like,
It's
no,
moving
like
the goalposts. Yeah.
exactly. And for me, I really believe that we need to be monetizing every impression, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where the money is. That's what we should be doing is monetizing these views. And I mean if you look at any other channel, like that's what they do. That's how they make money. And I think that we're in a really unique interesting place. And then just throw in AI and who the heck knows what's going to happen in the next year,
I,
right?
but I want to backtrack a little bit on this because you nailed it. This is the year we determine why attribution or what attribution survives and the companies that we're working with on it. IP and user agent is not accurate. It is
Right. I
close
have heard
enough.
this.
Well, I mean, but look, we all accepted it because it was there and it was the best we could get. The platforms didn't give us any more. We had nothing more there. The option was reject it and get passed by or buy into the best case
Mhm.
scenario. Now we bought into the best case scenario. I agree with you. I don't believe that, like, I want someone to walk me through the methodology about how you're going to analyze it without any data. What are your inputs? What makes it unique? What right do I have on that? If you're modeling it, I should have a say on that model and the input on that model because it's my data and maybe I can pass you more of it before a brand gets it. But that's not how these platforms are set up. I think that the people that have the most to prove and win or lose this year are those attribution companies because you said it. Would you rather you have a show that has 5 million or your network has 5 million downloads or whatever a month, right? And in that scenario, 1 million of it can be tracked through a pixel now. Is it easier to say no pixels and go back
Right?
to promo codes and post-purchase survey? We work with Fairing. They've been doing amazing things on the post-purchase survey and insights. Is it easier to say none, or is it easier to say 1 million of this 5 was tracked by pixel and we've extrapolated the other 4 million, right? Like, I don't know. And I think that people like you, networks and publishers, are going to be able to make these decisions now because you're going to look at the advertiser and you're going to say, I'm happy to pay for it, but that can't be the metric of success for our platform because it is more nuanced than that. So do you want some data that might be confusing that we have to spend a few more meetings to talk about? Or do you want to go to a different method? And that's the hard part. And I agree with you, podcasting is in this weird spot. it is so wild to me to hear people be like, oh, Pete Davidson's podcasts on Netflix, don't you just mean show because it doesn't have an RSS feed? Does anybody remember 4 years ago where we were just hoping anybody would say the word podcast without cracking a joke afterwards? Like, was it Finn Wolfhard in Ghostbusters or whatever? There's a character in one of the Ghostbuster movies to like call him the dork of the group. His name is Podcast, right? Like, we skipped over celebrating the fact that Taylor Swift got on a podcast, which was really a YouTube live stream that
Right.
was turned into a podcast, and she called it a podcast, and she says podcast in her song, and that we had award ceremonies, like massive award ceremonies that included podcasts with the jokes. But heck, if I was one of
I
those
know.
brands, I'd be happy for that free
I
advertisement there.
know.
And
I totally agree. I was like, I thought the Golden Globes were great.
but there's not a single person consuming podcasts. It's just like, "Ugh, not a podcast." Next, all of the consumers they get it. They know what it is to them or what matters. And the word has such magnetism right now. And we are wasting so much time with this like uppity nature of determining what it is. But that's why like you're talking about all these things, video and audio and social and 360, like we have to get all bites of the apple right now. We have to take advantage of all that. And I think advertising is the most stable it's ever been. But I
Mhm.
think the big realization that I've had is that for most people, advertising is not going to pay their bills, but it will keep the lights on. So what's next? Is it live shows? Is it selling your own product? Is it doing stuff in other channels and other things
Mhm.
there? Right? Like that base advertising should be enough to know that you can make all of your shows this year, but it might
Sure.
not be how you like how you retire early or anything there, except for some of the top. So there's so much more opportunity there.
I agree. Well, and I think, kind of jumping over to the creator side of things, one of the positions that I have taken over the years is that podcasters need to be business owners. They need to run
Yeah.
their podcasts like businesses. And if you are in business, you shouldn't just have one stream of income. You should have multiple streams of income. And yes, you can make money on advertising and you can sell courses and products and live events. And oh, by the way, you and I both know tons of people making a ton of money on Patreon, right? Like
Mhm.
I talk to podcasters and I'm like, wait, you're making $20,000 a month from Patreon? Like, I mean, it's crazy. Or I mean, I've talked to podcasters who are making $1 million a year on Patreon. It's insane to me. And they could not, and their show does not support that for ad revenue. They could never make $1 million a year in ad revenue. So I do think it's really important from a content creator perspective that they really are thinking about how can I make this? And I mentioned this in my last interview that I did, but I do think that Tom's article that he wrote about, you're not trying to monetize your woodworking, right? Like if podcasts are a hobby, then it's a hobby. And I do feel like there's a place there, right? Where we do have to we have two sides, right? There's this ecosystem we've built with creators that want to create audio, video, social, all the things, right? So like they're creating all of this and there's obviously brands over there looking to reach this audience because oh by the way, where else are you going to reach them now? And so I mean the two need to work together. There's a lot of power in that, but we also do have to remember at the end of the day that there is a place for, hey, maybe starting a podcast isn't going to be your multi-million-dollar business. Maybe it can, maybe it can be self-sustaining, like you said, through ad revenue, and maybe it can be even more than that if you have other products in there. But there are levels to all of it.
Yeah. I think we did a massive amount of damage to the creator economy with podcasting because there's like this year-long period where these people who were artists were all of a sudden paid like $200,000 salaries as production people and to lead teams and given massive budgets, six-figure budgets to build whatever show they wanted. And they didn't need to know, was there an audience, how to grow it, how to sell ads against it. And it happened for like a year. And
Mhm.
then we fired those people and we didn't explain anything to them, which like is like our massive mess up. But then there was a delusion for like 2 more years that this was still happening because there were still conversations and
Right.
deals that were happening and fleshing out. But I think that we've created a lot of disillusion on that. Like the joke starving artists isn't because every artist is like rich and stuff like that. There are plenty of people who buy into their art and get completely ignored. And that's really tough to hear. But like podcasting messed it up for a year, we have to remember what it was like before. And everybody who does and is back to that push is finding success. I don't believe you can find, I think there's more six-figure jobs in the business of podcasting, working in podcasting in some other way than there is in YouTube or influencer or anything like that. We have our job board, which every one of our partners is terrible at uploading their new jobs. And I spend so much time on LinkedIn finding new jobs to put on there. But I constantly 3 to 5 new jobs every day about podcasting and audio and all these things on there that it's just so exciting to me. Because I believe that, the word creator, Eric Newsom wrote this article about like creators versus executives.
Mhm.
And I think that executives is just the shitty way to call people like you and I that like understand that like, hey, maybe you need to make money off of it. When like we do help creators and we work with creators and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Hobbyists have a place, right? It's so exciting to me that my son wants to do a podcast and we're recording it and it's just for us and it's fun. That's a hobby. Artists, the people who are compelled to do it, that have to do it and get it out there. I'm glad how accessible it is for them to do audio and maybe video now with some of the AI tools or what the reduction in expectations on there. But an artist doesn't do it because they want to get paid. A hobbyist doesn't do it, they want to get paid. The cross section of that is creator. They're like,
Right,
maybe it'd
right.
be great if I could pay for my car with that. Maybe it would be great if this was my job. And those people, I think podcasting accelerated that mindset that they do have to be entrepreneurs. They do have to be business owners more than any other space, right? So
Mhm.
it's neat and I don't envy it, right? There's a reason why this isn't my D&D podcast and I'm getting you to play a D&D game with me and we're trying to monetize that and compete with Critical Role. I know what I can make happen and how I'm going to make money in my career. But yeah, it's just level setting. I think we had a lot of opportunity for a lot of people, and then we absolutely, as an industry, pulled the rug. But like, it's still easier and more accessible than almost any other place if you just show up and you ask questions, you participate, you put money into it to grow it, and you find out like, hey, is there actually an audience for it?
Right, right. No, for sure. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but I started a podcast before I started True Native because I wanted to be a podcaster. Like to me, I listened to all these shows. I thought they were amazing. I love business. I love entrepreneurship. And so I listened to all these shows and I was like, I want my own podcast. So I started a podcast. And I don't know how many episodes I recorded, like maybe 4 or 5. And then I was like, I think I want to start a business for podcasters, not be a podcaster. Now, if I could go back in time, I think that if I had built, my business, female business entrepreneur show, and I started that 11 years ago and it was still live today, I would probably be killing it in that business podcast space. So I wish I would have done both instead of not one or the other, but hindsight, right? So
You could have been signing with Stephen Bartlett right now.
I know. I could be Stephen Bartlett. I could be Heather Osgood, the Stephen Bartlett of the US, but
I
oh
love it.
well.
I love it. No, but it's good. It's like I think that that's the neat part about it. I think that everybody in podcasting cares. Like I'll tell you, there's a lot of other industries that are recruiting with great salaries, and you can actually kind of probably turn your email off at 4 or 5 o'clock most days. Everybody here loves the space. Like it
I
it
know.
really is a big community of people who really all care and like put in the effort and talk to each other and help each other. Even if they can't directly help, how do they give that advice or feedback on like, here, if you come back, this is how we can engage. So I don't know. It's fun and it's exciting. I feel bad for the people who had a bad run of it, who switched or experienced that increase and then decrease. I can't imagine if my salary went from 75K to 200,000, how I would be comfortable making 75K again. But in a 2 year blip, it's kind of like you got to kind of look at these things. You got to kind of reevaluate where the market is and where you fit and how you can grow back to that. Because I
Right.
do think podcasting is a place where a team of 20 or less can make great money on their own terms and really thrive here. Which, by the way, to super derail, congratulations on 10 years in business.
Thank you. Yes, it's very exciting. It's kind of surreal that it's been 10 years and I feel like I need at least another 10 years to perfect what we're doing because things are constantly changing, but it's really great.
Yeah, it honestly, since 10 years is such a killer point because 2016 was really when dynamic ad insertion came out in force. And it feels like every 2 years since then, the industry is completely different, right?
Yeah.
Spotify added shortly after that. We had the pandemic, we had the infusion of cash into it and the bubble bursting. And then where we are now, like every 2 years, like people are like, can we look at cyclical data? I was just like, you can.
I
I don't know
know.
who's it going to help.
I know, I know. Even like one of our podcasters the other day, they were looking at their numbers and the hosting company's like, well, just look back at last year's episode to like kind of get a sense of what this year's episode is going to be like. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. It doesn't work across the industry. Like things are always changing. And as we've been talking about, and I really do think, I feel like this is a year of change. Like
Yep.
I am predicting this. I'm hoping that it's for the good, but you never know, what's going to happen. But I do see a lot of change on the horizon for the podcast
Yeah.
industry. So,
I think every single company that can get things lean and efficient and put aside some extra cash to play around with new ideas and new initiatives and not wait for the money to come to them. Like anybody who can like dive into the idea of tours and live shows and stuff that and not wait for a sponsor to come in and pay for it, but just like get it moving, right? There, Live Nation does awesome deals for podcasters if you can show that there's audience and things like that, right? Or just get a subscription out there, just ask people for it. If you have unfilled inventory, I really want to see people get back to cost per acquisition, right? Like affiliate on that, right? Like I think that some of those things are so compelling. And I've watched smaller creators make thousands of dollars a month when they wouldn't have touched that, even if they sold out at top price on their total download volume. So I think it's everybody who is willing to say, like, yeah, I don't lose anything by trying this,
mhm.
right? Like, I think that those people are the ones who win this year that say, like, yeah, there's an opportunity here. Yeah, I can buy in here. Okay, well, it's going to take a little bit of money. It's going to take a little bit of time and effort. Everybody who invests in their business this year and takes risks will either learn where they don't want to expand and continue to have a safe and growing business, or they'll be one of the first movers on there.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. If people want to connect with Podcast Movement, Sounds Profitable, South by Southwest that's coming up, where should they go to find all that info?
Yeah, soundsprofitable.com will be the best way for our newsletter, which we'd love people to sign up for, and all of our research and everything there. We also, Podcast Movement, there's some links on there for what's happening at South by. There is an express interest page. It is only a 400-person capacity, but thanks to partners like True Native, Sounds Profitable building this out with Podcast Movement, we were able to make it free. There's no tickets at all, but it is first come, first serve on that basis. We are making all of the content available, and that will be a big through line of everything we're doing in the future. Podcasting is about freely accessing content. So anything that we're doing event-wise, that content will be made available publicly, because the focus for us is the event is really where we interact. The content is where we help people grow. So definitely keep an eye out on that. And I'm excited. I think that in the next couple of weeks, we'll be announcing the full details of our New York event, which
Great.
is really exciting.
Yeah,
Really
excellent.
exciting.
Excellent. We're excited to hear about that. Well, Bryan, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope that you have enjoyed the conversation with Bryan. They are always lively. Please spend in podcast ads, and we will talk to you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Advertising Playbook, your source to a better understanding of the podcast advertising industry.